Alright team, last week we talked about what makes an animal and some of the processes that were going on that led to the massive diversification of animals. Now, this week we are going to investigate invertebrates, and really we're going to focus on what are the main problems that they faced being an animal and increasing in body size, and how did they deal with that problem, the adaptations that they have to deal with those different problems. So let's first take a look at kind of the major groups of invertebrates, and then we'll dive into, in other videos, how they dealt with the major problems that they faced as they evolved and transitioned to different ecosystems in different parts of the world. So we have three major clades of bilateral animals, right? That's really what we're going to focus on mostly this week, is the bilateral animals. We have the Lophotrochozoa clade. Lophotrochozoa, I know, it's a fun word to say. Ecdysozoa and Deuterostomia are all these bilateral clades. So these are all the bilateral clades of animals right here. But all of those right there in red, those are all invertebrates. So here's our bilaterals. And everything in red is an invertebrate animal. Invertebrates make up over 95% of all of the species of animal species on our planet. Right? So most animals are invertebrate animals. Okay? So they're often ignored. We kind of look over them like they're lower and lesser animals, but all organisms that are extant today are all equally evolved. There are no higher or lesser organisms. So we are going to focus kind of first on the Ecdysozoa, specifically the Arthropoda phylum, because they are the most successful phylum of animals. But generally what we're doing in this week is we are going to look at how did different groups of animals, they can deal with different problems like transport or digesting food, things like that. So arthropods, they take the cake as far as having the most number of species. There's approximately over 800,000 species of arthropods, potentially more that we haven't even discovered yet. Potentially some that have gone extinct before we've had the opportunity to discover them, right? Most of what we're finding in your leaf litter samples, those would have been arthropods, right? They're found in most environments on our planet, marine, terrestrial, freshwater, almost everywhere on our planet you can find an arthropod. But why? What makes them so unique and so special? What's so great about these arthropods? They have the winning combination of having a segmented body plan, a hard outer skeleton made of chitin, and jointed appendages. So segments basically just, in a sense, mean repeating units, but each unit, each segment can take on specializations. So like here we see in the centipede, right, we have many repeating units with legs coming off of it, and then we get the abdomen with some pincers right here, right? But we can see there's still segmentation, there's still repeating units in these other arthropods, but now we have some specialization. Like the scorpion has a specialization of producing venom, and its claws up front are specialized for grasping and pinching, right? So we still have that segmentation, but those repeating units, but now each unit can kind of take on its own form and function. The other key characteristic of arthropods is that they have an exoskeleton made of chitin. Does that word sound familiar? Chitin, that molecule? We saw that in fungi. Chitin is the molecule that makes up the cell walls of fungi. So this is an example of convergent evolution. They did not inherit that characteristic of chitin, of being able to build chitin from their ancestor. They came across that on their own, independently. Okay, but it provides a really rigid structure for protection, which also help the arthropods take over the terrestrial environment, help prevent desiccation. And it provides an attachment for muscles as well. So they can attach muscles to their exoskeleton and then contract those muscles to move, as opposed to using hydrostatic skeleton, which we'll see later. In fact, the name Arthropoda means jointed appendages. Pod meaning foot, basically, and arth meaning joint, right? So they have appendages that can bend, basically. That's the big idea here, because joints allow for a bending, right? So that in itself, as opposed to just having appendages that just stick out and are not really motile or can't really contract or move, that is huge. Now you can grab stuff, right? You can have a joint and you can grab your food. You can more easily walk across surfaces, right? So segmented body plan, exoskeleton made of chitin and jointed appendages really is what let arthropods kind of take over the world and go crazy in their rapid diversification. They were also the first ones to colonize land, but we'll kind of get into that later. But how do we get so many of these different body plans? Where does the segmentation and the specialization come from? So we talked briefly about Hox genes and how they allow for a bilateral body plan, right? And the idea here is that different Hox genes will code for how to create that region of an animal, right? So we have this Hox gene right here codes for creating the mouth parts. This Hox gene right here codes for creating kind of the face. This Hox gene right here, we start to get into the abdomen, right? So basically what happened is that we duplicate these genes, which means we also start to duplicate the segments. So we start to increase the segment number. And when a gene is duplicated, we make an exact copy of that gene and splice it into the genome. That gene can also take on new functions. It can accumulate new mutations. Some of those mutations might be helpful, like having jointed appendages or having different types of appendages in different regions, right? So segmentation is a result of Hox genes, and those repeating units are really due to these genes duplicating to create multiple segments that are similar, but mutations have arisen in which now these segments have taken on specialization. We see something similar. We have Hox genes as well. That's how we get segmentation of like our ribs and our spinal cord. And these Hox genes drive the development of anteriors here, posterior here, legs and arms go here, right? So these Hox genes are preserved throughout animals, but arthropods have a unique set of them that have been repeated to give them the segmentation and these specializations within those segmentations.